Hello, my name is Jackson Carr, and I'm giving my capstone presentation over video because of traffic simply, and I'll leave it at that. I'll explain more in the email. But hi, Professor Bartels and Schneider. You will also be receiving this video along with Professor Sun, because why not? And in this presentation, I'll be discussing the idea of the hero, and I'll look back at the very first heroes that we encounter as readers and story listeners, if you will. Achilles and Odysseus in Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, respectively. And then also more modern heroes in literature that we encounter during the Romantic era. And during this section of the presentation, I'll emphasize heavily not only the works of William Wordsworth, but a little bit of Byron, and an article by Paul Cantor, professor at the University of Virginia, in which he takes the argument that those two authors specifically defined, or redefined rather, the definition of the hero and the hero's journey during that era. And with that being said, that little introduction, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go ahead and run through it all, no editing, even though it's a video, so if I make mistakes, bear with me. That's the fun of presentations, I guess. So here we go. I want a hero, an uncommon want, when every year and month brings forth a new one. Till after cloying with Gazette, with Cant, the age discovers he is not the true one. And this quote from Lord Byron in his attempt at the epic Don Juan, which I won't go too heavily into, really emphasizes his frustration with the times in which he lived. The Romantic era of literature from like the mid-1700s to the early 1800s. Sorry, something just popped up. Was a frustrating time for the masses of people as more and more figures of authority rose to power and kind of abused it in a way. For instance, like Napoleon and a lot of the kings that resulted in both the French and American Revolution. And so revolution was a heavy part of these romantic thought and their influences. And it's not quite the same, but it is a little bit similar if we were to rewind and look back to the original heroes in literature. They were also very influenced by the idea of revolting and fighting against something. They were warriors at heart, and we'll go ahead and start with Achilles and a definition for a hero that I found from an author, Marguerite Finkelberg. I couldn't find much on her credentials, but the definition itself that she introduces early in her article, Odysseus and the Genus Hero, goes as so. The hero is one who prizes honor and glory above life itself and dies on the battlefield in the prime of life. It's a little dramatic for me, but in the sense of what a Greek and Roman hero, or in the sense of what the era would have been, it's pretty accurate, and Achilles in the Iliad really fits that mold. His life from the start has been one of glory. He was half god, in fact Zeus's son, and half mortal, but dipped in a river that made him pretty much impervious except for that Achilles heel. And this type of story made him immortal in the sense of glory in literature. Everybody knew the name Achilles and was able to imagine themselves in that sort of thing and try to embody a hero as great as Achilles, in the sense of a warrior, which was such a crucial aspect of culture during that time. He was also a symbol of fate in the sense that he was meant to be that. He exists in literature as the glorified war hero because he was made immortal by the gods and these extra influences that really brought him above everything else. And his story just needed to be told, and it was easy to tell because it was so powerful and so different. And then we encounter a little bit different of a hero's journey, but also something very powerful and with the same need to be told in Odysseus. in the Odyssey with the character Odysseus, as Homer explores the other side of what a hero can be. And I found a definition that I explored in my paper that kind of took a similar stance to Finkelberg on the dramatic side of what this hero needed to be in the sense of glory. And it goes, astuteness, shrewdness, artfulness, wiliness, slyness, craftiness, deceitfulness, cunning, and mendacity are not fit qualities for a hero of elevated epic, as they all lie on the shadier side of cleverness rather than wisdom, prudence, sagacity, resourcefulness, and discretion. I find it hard to believe that Odysseus was an example of the first half of those in Homer's eyes when he was telling his story, as he's representative of a pretty great man in the sense of his deeds and his pursuits. He had goals of returning to his family, and he cared deeply for the men that he both fought with in the similar wars as Achilles, and whom he also became somewhat of a friend with, definitely acquaintances. But he was a powerfully emotional person and a powerfully intelligent person, a very different hero than Achilles. He wouldn't act on impulse. He would step back and think and make a plan. And it was all part of some bigger idea that he was piecing together himself rather than being influenced by. And this made him oddly human and a builder of his own world in a way, as he took steps to learn and experience brand new things in something that had been so predetermined. He could have led a life like Achilles over and over again in his own journey, as the gods would step in and interfere. Like when he was on the island of Calypso, he was tempted by this fate and this allowance of fate in his life. Yet he decided to go past that and continue to go past that over and over again, which makes him a very different hero than Achilles. Yet both exemplify very heroic aspects, as they committed great deeds for the community, and Homer tried to capture that. And I don't think that either definition, though as dramatized as they may be, necessarily doesn't capture that, or does perfectly. But the hero's definition is imperfect. And if we continue to look forward back up to a more modern time in the Romantic era of literature, we see less and less heroes like this. What has already passed is a point called the Dark Ages, which kind of gives a hint at what sort of people were arising in the world as it was getting pieced together and separated in a way and divided, conquered and divided. But if we look at all the revolution that was happening during the Romantic era, we can kind of get a feeling for why the authors were frustrated when they were looking for a hero. And we see the frustration in William Wordsworth's attempt at writing one. He was going to write this epic called The Recluse, and it was he wanted to enter himself in the conversation of a great writer. He wanted to be able to capture the story that needed to be told, but he couldn't find one. And on lines 169 to 176 of the prelude in Book 1, we see Wordsworth struggle with this. It was usually so easy to write the epic because somebody like Achilles, everybody knew who Achilles was. It's so easy to tell the story of somebody who was literally touched by the gods. But he was struggling so hard to find someone that could be that. And so he says, time, place, and manners, these I seek, and these I find in plenteous store, but nowhere such as may be singled out with steady choice. No little band of yet remembered names, whom I, in perfect confidence, might hope to summon back from lonesome banishment, and make inmates in the hearts of men, now living or to live in time to come. Simply there was nobody with the weight of Achilles or Odysseus that existed in this time. He was bouncing around with authors and a couple of revolutionaries themselves, like William Wallace, but he couldn't quite go forward with confidence on anybody. And he was talking about, he found himself really begin to start talking about himself towards the end of the prelude, which he never actually really got to write. The Recluse, there was only bits and pieces found, but that's not necessarily important, right? Well, it is in the sense of who Wordsworth was as a person, but I'm not necessarily going to go into that on the presentation, sadly. But we see him reach a point as he's progressed through like about half of the prelude, and he's realizing that he's beginning to talk of himself and his own experiences and how important they've been to him, and how easy it is for him to share them in honesty and want them to be heard by other people, and how that his story is representative of the great themes in the classic epics. So in Book 3, on lines 171 to 178, he says this quote in the prelude that kind of exemplifies what I was just saying in his struggle and his experience. Of genius, power, creation, and divinity itself I have been speaking, for my theme has been what passed within me, not of outward things done visibly for other minds, words, signs, symbols, or actions, but of my own heart have I been speaking, and my youthful mind. We see here how powerful Wordsworth has found his experiences and how simple it is for him to share, and how important he feels that it is that he shares those experiences with man so that he too could experience that. And in a way, this sort of mindset that he embraces and embodies not only captures Homer's ease in thus writing about a hero, but his own ease in finding a hero in himself, that he was able to relate to maybe some of the aspects that W.B. James didn't really like in Odysseus. But Wordsworth's experiences in the world were really exemplified heavily in his poems about nature. I'll look at a few specifically, and I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, and lines written above Tintern Abbey, as they really show how powerful just simple experiences in nature were for Wordsworth. And for him, it was the abandonment of everyday life and going out into nature that made it so powerful. How undiscovered it seemed to him still, how new everything was, how different things were, simple. Alright, sorry, I gotta organize my class for okay. So Paul Cantor, in his article, really emphasizes the point that Wordsworth makes in his own life, that he needs to separate, and that it needs to be something new that he goes and discovers, and that nature was his escape from a world that needed an escape, and that Wordsworth was trying to capture this in all of his poetry, because it was what he felt within him, and poetry for him was simply that collection of thoughts, that divine overflow of emotion that he experienced. And simply that was rebellious at this time too, in a vague sense of the word. But all of his work was so truly his own, and so personable in its own experiences, and so passionate that it was hard not to be glorified. And as he ended up dying early, which was kind of funny when I was reading Finkelberg's definition, because he did die in the battlefield. He wasn't even able to finish his own epic, but we see in poems like I wandered lonely as a cloud, how passionate he was just about a field of daffodils, how he was able to, in his memories, recapture that emotion that he felt and that divinity that touched him just from the simple beauty in the world that you can't find in the modern hero. And because they don't appreciate those classic things, like that are as simple as nature. And even as he got older and became more frustrated with his ability to capture those emotions, because everything, you can only feel that really once, something so powerful like a presence of God or a presence of something greater, which he referenced to as the sublime in his poems. There was a line in lines written above, or a couple lines in lines written above Tintern Abbey that really exemplified how powerful his ability to recollect those emotions that he felt and recapture them in just his own solitude. And that time has passed, and all its aching joys are now no more, and all its dizzy raptures, not for this faint eye, nor mourn, nor murmur. Other gifts have followed, for such loss I would believe abundant recompense, for I have learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still, sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, though of ample power to chasten and subdue. I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime. And in this section of his poem, Wordsworth finds himself unable to experience that subliminal feeling that he got once he separated from it all and went out and observed the world for what felt like the first time in his thoughtless youth. He went back with a new vision on the world. He couldn't experience that same initial emotion again because it was simply a one-time thing, but it was powerful, so powerful that he felt he needed to attempt to recapture it in every single experience of his life. And he was able to realize that was truly divine in a sense as well, that he could appreciate things like that. And so his attempt to capture that emotion and recreate it was truly needed. It was the story that needed to be told, as it really led to a different frame of thought for a lot of authors and a lot of major thinkers of the next couple hundred years that helped build the world that we are in today, that still, in my opinion, needs a hero, much like Wordsworth and Byron craved. But we even saw with the following era of literature and thought in the Victorian era how important it was for those authors to go out and do something, though it was a little more community based. But we can see in a Victorian author's poem, Lord Alfred Tennyson, he tells the story of Ulysses once he gets back, also known as Odysseus, once he gets back from his journey. And these lines really exemplify the Victorian thought and kind of what Wordsworth was sort of embodying in his romantic pursuit of experience. And here is Odysseus's quote to finish the poem. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down, or do you know what, I'll do the whole thing. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off and sitting well in order smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down, it may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew, though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And this these lines by Tennyson really capture the human spirit in literature that's in storytelling that we all crave when we hear a story of a hero. We all wish to plug ourselves into that role. And it's through the influences of authors like this that we really allow a hero to exist in the world. And so to not give them credit as being one just by telling us the story sort of sells it all short, in my opinion. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening, and a great career here at Cal Baptist. But yeah, everybody's got to love the author, especially the Romantics. Wordsworth was the man. Peace.